Last year, I asked you to pray for me, and it's very obvious that you...
At exactly 88 years old, Judge Frank Caprio, affectionately known around the world as the nicest judge in the world, quietly passed away after a courageous battle with pancreatic cancer. And in that moment, Hollywood, and really the entire world, didn't just lose a jurist. It lost a deeply human soul, a figure who came to represent fairness, warmth, and the radical power of compassion in a world that too often forgets it. The heartbreak rippled instantly. His death wasn't a quiet passing that slipped under the radar. It became the headline. Fans remembered him not as a stern figure behind a bench, but as a man who made people laugh in court, who listened when others would scold, who forgave when punishment was the easy choice. The emotional weight deepened when his final hospital video
Unfortunately, I've had a setback. I'm back in the hospital, and I'm coming to you again, asking you to remember me in your prayers once more.
Frail but smiling, he gave a familiar thumbs up and asked softly to be remembered in prayers. For someone who had given kindness his entire life, this last request was his way of asking for kindness in return. Governors ordered flags to fly at half-staff. Strangers left flowers outside courthouses. Comment sections turned into digital memorials filled with gratitude. And Hollywood, usually abuzz with premieres, scandals, and gossip, stopped for a moment. Actors, comedians, and talk show hosts echoed the same sentiment. The world had lost someone who proved true greatness isn't about fame or fortune, but about how you treat people when nobody's watching. But here's the lingering question. Was Judge Caprio's passing simply the end of a remarkable life? Or was it the farewell?
The doctors told me to do. I'm feeling stronger.
Good.
I flew cross country to be here today.
Of course.
From Rhode Island to California.
Yeah.
So I think I'm taking the right steps.
To an era where compassion still had a seat at the table of power. To understand why his loss feels so enormous, you have to go back to the courtroom, where his quiet revolution began.
At the end of the case, I asked Braden to look me in the eye and to say, "Nice to meet you." One of the most important lessons we can teach our children is to make a good first impression. A firm handshake
Came through rulings that shook the legal world. He rose because his courtroom became a sanctuary of empathy in a society addicted to punishment. Take the case of the elderly man caught speeding. Nervous, voice trembling, he explained he'd been rushing to drive his son to cancer treatment. The courtroom stilled. Any other judge might have fined him on the spot, not Caprio. He leaned forward, eyes soft, and said, "You've got enough to worry about. Case dismissed." Or the young mother, overwhelmed and barely holding her children together, pleading for leniency. Instead of scolding her, Caprio turned the moment into a lesson. He invited her kids to the bench, letting them decide the fine. What could have been humiliation became laughter, dignity, and grace. And who could forget the countless times he reminded people, "I wear a heart, not a badge." Billions of views later, those moments spread like gospel. Clips of his rulings went viral not because of drama, but because mercy itself had become a spectacle worth sharing. In turning an ordinary municipal court into a global stage, Frank Caprio proved something Hollywood rarely gets right. Humanity shines brighter than celebrity. But here's the question. His passing reopens. In a world that rewards ego and fame, can anyone match a legacy built entirely on empathy? For all the joy and mercy he gave from the bench, his most unforgettable moment came not in a courtroom, but in a hospital bed. In December, after his health worsened, he recorded what would become his final message. No robe, no gavel. Just a man confronting the frailty of life with the same humility he had shown others. His voice was soft, his body weak, but his spirit, untouched. With effort, he gave that familiar thumbs up and whispered, "Remember me in your prayers." It was disarming. For decades, he was the one giving mercy, forgiving mistakes, and comforting strangers. And here he was, turning the roles around, asking the world for mercy of its own, not in law, but in love. The response was overwhelming. Social media flooded with messages of hope. Prayer walls appeared in comment sections. Strangers confessed how his courtroom videos had changed them. "You made me believe in good people again. Your kindness helped me forgive myself." It wasn't just mourning. It was a collective realization that this man, who touched lives in seconds-long clips, had left an imprint far deeper than entertainment. His vulnerability dissolved the barrier between public figures and ordinary people. He proved you could wield authority and still be gentle, face death and still inspire courage. But the aching question remains, how do you honor a man so universally loved? And who can possibly fill the void he's left behind? When the news broke, Hollywood didn't quite know how to respond. This wasn't the loss of a fellow actor or director. He wasn't part of their machine, yet within hours, the industry shifted. Celebrities who rarely acknowledge life outside their bubble paused their feeds. No red carpets, no movie promos, just tributes to a judge from Providence who had somehow touched them too. Late-night hosts referenced him with sincerity instead of sarcasm. Talk show panels, usually buzzing with gossip, fell quiet. Actors and comedians admitted they had cried watching his courtroom clips. Fans noticed the difference. Hollywood looked unpolished, even vulnerable. And it struck a nerve. Here was an industry that thrives on drama, on scandal, on controversy, suddenly united in grief for a man whose greatest scandal was forgiving someone's parking ticket. But beneath the polished tributes lay a deeper realization. Caprio represented something Hollywood had lost touch with: real kindness, real empathy, the ability to trend without ego, to go viral without controversy. His death wasn't just about losing a man, it was about being reminded of the glaring absence of people like him in positions of influence. So the heavy question lingers. Have we lost more than Judge Caprio? Did we just lose the role model Hollywood needed most? Frank Caprio wasn't famous for harsh verdicts or courtroom theatrics. He was famous because he chose something rarer, something braver: mercy. At a time when society feels fractured, when one mistake can end a career, he reminded us that humanity matters more than perfection. One line of his has been replayed endlessly since his passing. I haven't met a person yet who hasn't made a mistake and needed a second chance. Simple, but profound. In those words, he dismantled the myth that justice must always be unforgiving. He redefined authority, not as crushing people, but lifting them when they'd already been crushed enough. That's why his death stings so deeply. He wasn't just a local judge, he became a mirror, reflecting a kinder way to lead. While politicians bickered and celebrities chased attention, Caprio modeled authority with empathy. No spin, no agenda, just care, and now the question looms. In a world addicted to outrage, who dares to carry that torch? If mercy was powerful enough to move millions from a small courtroom, imagine what it could do on Hollywood's stage. But here's the fear. If no one picks up where he left off, do we risk losing not just a man, but the reminder that compassion can still be power? When his passing was confirmed, the internet shifted. The noise quieted, the feeds softened. Twitter trended with R.I.P. Judge Caprio, and RESTINKINDNESS. But what stood out wasn't the hashtags. It was the tone. No snark, no cynicism, just gratitude. Clips of his courtroom moments were recirculated, now captioned with lines like, "This is how justice should look." On Reddit, users shared how his videos calmed their anxiety, how they showed them to kids as lessons in empathy, how they cried over stranger stories because Caprio made them care. Even Facebook, a platform notorious for heated arguments, became a prayer wall. Strangers from across the globe left messages as if saying goodbye to their own grandfather. It wasn't just mourning a man, it was mourning the reminder he embodied. The grief revealed something bigger. The world is starving for compassion, and Judge Caprio had been proof that it could exist in power. But grief always leaves a challenge. If his kindness could ripple across billions of screens in mere seconds, what happens if we choose to carry it beyond the screen? Or will we let his memory fade into just another trend, loved today and forgotten tomorrow? Caprio's legacy wasn't built on viral clips alone. It was carved in the way he lived and the values he passed on. He funded scholarships for children who couldn't afford school. He supported community programs that gave struggling families a lifeline. He mentored countless people, not with lofty speeches, but by showing that integrity and compassion can exist alongside authority. Even his city recognized it. Providence renamed the courtroom he presided over in his honor, ensuring anyone who walked through those doors would be reminded of his standard. Not a standard of severity, but of humanity. But here's the challenge. Legacies are fragile. Hollywood has a way of turning real human stories into fleeting trends. Judge Caprio's life is a test for all of us. Will we reduce him to that kind judge on YouTube? Or will we let his example reshape how we think about leadership, mercy, and kindness? Because if empathy can outshine headlines, then Frank Caprio didn't just leave us memories, he left us a mission. Judge Frank Caprio's passing is more than the end of a life. It's the closing of a chapter where compassion dared to sit at the table of power. At 88, his body gave in, but his light remains. His courtroom clips, his words, his final smile. They're not just moments, they're proof that kindness outlives the person who gives it. He showed us that power doesn't need to intimidate, it can embrace. That justice doesn't need to be cold, it can be warm. That leadership isn't about raising your voice, it's about raising people. Yes, Hollywood will mourn him, politicians will make statements, fans will share clips. But unless his example shifts the way we treat each other, his story risks fading into another headline. That would be the greatest injustice of all. The real tribute won't be flowers or plaques. It will be the parent choosing patience over anger, the teacher choosing encouragement over criticism, the leader choosing mercy over punishment. That's where his legacy lives, not in marble, but in moments. So here's the final truth. Judge Frank Caprio has passed, but his light? It's not gone. It demands to be carried forward, brighter with every act of compassion we choose in his name. And when the next headline breaks, when the next call for kindness rises above the noise, you know where to find me.